Hey, everybody. Welcome back to DDJ's Inferno, the show where we discuss issues relevant to men and gynocentrism. And today we have with us dating coach DeAnna Lorraine. And as you can see from the screen, she wanted to do in camera, which is perfectly fine. So I just wanted to kind of touch base with everybody before we get started and do a little bit of housekeeping. Now, you'll notice that the Bukkake choke slams that normally come up on the lower right hand of the screen, for some reason, I'm told that they are not working. So because of that, what we're going to do is during the Q&A session at the end of the conversation, we are going to go ahead and just put question and then brackets and then the question, whether it's to myself or whether it's to DeAnna. I also wanted to give a big thank you to Rose Blades. You guys may know her as DDJ's Pocket Thought. Rose is going to be collecting questions for me today, and she's going to be shooting them over via text so that we have access to that today. So we're kind of flying a little bit by the seat of our pants. So with that in mind, I also wanted to say that underneath the chat window, you're going to see there's the MGTOW Minds group. As you know, Minds is the free speech social media platform. And in addition to the Minds, there's a link to my book, The Feminist Lie, of course, Patreon, as well as misandrytoday.com, hashtag massive shill alert. In addition to that, and we'll end the shill alert with this, if you are on Amazon Prime and you have a Twitch and you're following me on Twitch and using Amazon Prime, you could subscribe to me and it's free. So you don't pay anything. Obviously, I benefit from it. You know, it's not quite YouTube shekels, but it is a step in the right direction. But with that, let me get those hashtag show alerts out of the way. They are done. Welcome, DeAnna. Welcome to DDJ's Inferno. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing awesome. So as we kind of get started, I wanted to kind of lead in with a little bit of softball. So obviously, you're a dating coach. Kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you got into being a dating coach.
Sure. And by the way, maybe that's why I'm so hot right now and sweating, because I'm in this inferno and I can feel being in the hot seat.
There you go.
So for me, I always wanted to actually be a marriage and family therapist. That was my original goal. And I did. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but my parents were divorced when I was young. And it had me really want to help people in their own relationships and learn, the keys to a successful relationship and marriage. So for me, that was always something I wanted to do ever since, a teenager. And when I graduated college and everything, I thought that I was going to still get my marriage and family therapist and license. And I decided I was so ambitious and I wanted to just start my business anyway. So I decided to, get certified life coach certification, and then NLP certification and some other certifications, and then just start my business. And I didn't realize it would take off so well, and it did. And I thought that, it makes more sense to coach single people while I was still unmarried than go right into coaching married couples when I'm this young little pipsqueak. And it just made more sense. And I just kind of stayed there. And I found that there was a need for both men and women to do that, to get help in that way. And I felt I can provide that service, and I was good at it. So that's what originally led me down that path.
Well, let me ask you this. How long have you been a dating coach?
About 7-8 years.
Okay. I'm not quite trying to age you yet. I just figured I'd at least start with that. And of course, the next most important question that my audience is concerned about is, are you a trap?
So a trap means a girl with a penis, right?
Well, a boy who has a penis who dresses and acts like a girl. Yeah, like Blair White's a trap. So...
No, I'm definitely not a trap.
Okay.
Definitely not. I mean,
okay. We got the important stuff out of the way. So
yes.
Okay, I can close the interview down now. Oh, there you go. It's done.
Sometimes I feel like I have a male brain, I'll be honest with you. I think it was growing up with all the brothers in my family, but I definitely am all female biologically.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so you were born there, you live there, life is good. Okay.
Good. I like being a female.
There you go. Now, you're an author. Talk to us a little bit about your book. You can go ahead and do your little show alert for your book and tell us about your book.
Sure. Yeah. So my book is called Making Love Great Again, The New Road to Reviving Romance and Winning at Relationships. And the book actually is, so I started kind of crossing over from a dating and relationship coach to like the political spectrum actually about a year and a half ago. Because when I was working with men and women, I started seeing the misandry going on and the absolute horror show of how men have been treated, how boys are being treated, and how modern feminism is just totally ruining and damaging relationships, how it's damaged our ability to date successfully and connect with each other, how it's causing divorces and marriage. So there started to be a real impact. I never liked feminism. I never aligned with it. But when I was working with boys and men every day, I started really seeing like the real impacts of that with men. So I started getting more and more frustrated, and also with my own dating life too, and with my clients. And I started putting the pieces together of this puzzle. Why is dating so bad right now? Why are relationships so bad? Why it's so hard to connect? And this is what I realized is connecting the dots. So I made a lot of connections there, some of them being feminism, sexual revolution, liberalism, liberal ideologies, porn, and a bunch of different things that fit into this puzzle of why, and also the downfall of our American values. Why are relationships so bad right now, and why are men being treated so poorly? And then, I just decided to make a book on it and come and speak out about it. And half of my book is about how we got to this current romance apocalypse that we're in now. And how to get out of the romance apocalypse and make love great again. And it's just, it's a prophetic book as well. It predicts what's going to happen in the next 5 years if we don't make any changes as a society. And we're headed for societal collapse for sure. And what we can do, I'm not saying that I have this pipe dream that everything's going to be rosy again like the 1950s. But I do feel like there's certain changes that we can make, more so even on the women's side, that we can get back to a more loving and peaceful space between men and women and try to heal the discord.
Okay. And how did you discover me?
I actually discovered you because when I was doing research for my book, I read a bunch of books on feminism and misandry. And I read your book, and you're actually in my bibliography. Not sure which page it is, but you're in my bibliography, The Feminist Lie. And when I was reading The Feminist Lie, I was like, damn, this is exactly what I think. And I was so bummed that, books like yours, books like mine, they need so much more publicity, and they need people to, speak out about them. But of course, they're going to get buried because it's not the popular narrative.
Well, and I would agree with that. I mean, when it came to my book, I knew that no one from the establishment was going to publish it. I was never going to find a publisher. So being able to publish it myself, number one, it was more profitable than traditional publishing because the book did so well. But also, I think it's just that I could say what I wanted to say without an editor trying to be like, oh, you need to soften this here, or you need to make this more. I could speak my mind in a very sincere way and not have to worry about what anybody was going to say to me about that. And I think a lot of people, in the community of men going their own way, I think that a lot of us, we understand that, there's a lot of gynocentric issues. There's a lot of feminist indoctrination going on. And at the end of the day, I believe that the rampant feminism has destroyed the social contract between men and women, to the point where women have become, for a variety of reasons, but I mean, we can deep dive a little bit into that, but for a variety of reasons, women have become incentivized to destroy their relationships. And, if you take a woman, for example, let's just say her sexual market value is a 6 or a 7, and you put makeup on her, and now all of a sudden she raises from a 6 or a 7 to an 8 or a 9, then what ends up happening is that, she'll go out to the bar, or she'll go someplace and she'll meet some guy, and he's like, oh, it's Tuesday and my dick hasn't gotten wet yet. He'll end up having sex with her, thinking I'm just hooking up and he'll move on with his day, she'll go home and think, oh, well, since I was able to have sex with this guy, clearly I deserve an 8 or a 9 or a 10. And any of the guys in my sexual market value range are now no longer good enough. And so, and to kind of build on that on a more systemic level, I believe that, and I say this in my book, I believe that feminism has created a promiscuity culture that also has not only further served to destroy the social contract between men and women, but it's also destroyed families and it's destroyed communities, by definition. And so that becomes a huge issue in that, how do you fix families? How do you fix relationships? How do you fix communities? Because if you adopt feminism and promiscuity, you're doing the exact opposite, and it's destroying everybody in the trade.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I am very, very hard on women because they ruined the social contract between men and women. Feminism is cancer. When they say feminism is cancer, I mean, I really believe it is cancer. It is absolutely toxic. I put in my book, actually, in bold letters, feminism is fake news, because it is. Anyone who believes in modern feminism is either like satanic or they're fake. They're just a sheep. Feminism has ruined families. It's ruined the family unit. It's ruined the marital unit. It's ruined the social contract between men and women. It's killed any goodwill that men have towards women. And it's also made women into total Jezebel whores who have no respect for themselves, but yet think that they deserve all the respect in the world. And hello, like why would a man want to commit to you? Why would he want to respect you when you're going around in a slut walk or you have a vagina hat on your head screaming obscenities at men and at Trump? Respect is earned. It's not just granted and demanded. So women have, I'm not going to say women because if I were around during this time, I would not have voted for these kinds of things, but feminists have really, killed themselves in a way. This is like they've created their own apocalypse. And it's sad to me that I live in very liberal LA, so I'm surrounded by feminists and liberals.
You live in dog shitistan. See, I call California dog shitistan for a variety of reasons, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I live right in the belly of the beast. So for me to be around this kind of insanity where these women have no idea the damage that they're doing and no idea, they don't know about MGTOW. Most of them would laugh in my face if I, when they read my book, they're like, oh, there's, MGTOW are just poor, angry men that don't know anything. No, actually, it's a huge movement that picks up steam by the day with a very rational reason why they're starting MGTOW or where they're in MGTOW. And women and feminists have no idea, and liberals have no idea what they've, it's the ideologies of feminism and liberalism, which are really kind of one and the same, that I feel have led to this destruction, this between men and women. And I believe that, we had something really great. A lot of people would complain about life in the 1950s, but I think that this was in the 50s, and this is why I put this on my cover, because and by the way, I get attacked by feminists all the time, especially with this book. They're like, why would you put a picture on your book of a man, the man molesting a woman beyond her consent, right? Like he's groping her beyond her consent. No, this is an iconic picture of romance. This is the way it used to be. Men were more aggressive. They were masculine. Women were feminine. They were more submissive and surrendering to a man. And I thought that the way that the social contract was back then, how marriage was understood by both men and women, it understood the very nature of females and the very nature of males. So it kept women from being crazy and emotional and having these ridiculously high standards. And it also kept women from divorcing men for zero reason at all, or walking around and behaving like sluts. And everything, even women voting, well, we can get into that later, but I think that there's a very good reasons why certain social structures were put into place. The patriarchy was put into place for good reason, and it wasn't to oppress women. It was to make for successful, thriving societies and better communities and better families.
It sounds like you're not very popular out there beyond the dating scene. Let me ask you this.
So say that feminists throw tomatoes at me on the daily.
Perfect. So you're a dating coach, not just for men, but for women also.
Yeah.
The women who come to you for dating coaching, what are they saying are their biggest challenges?
Well, this is what's so hilarious. I do this long skit in my book about like a day in a life of a typical 35-year-old feminist woman who thinks she's empowered. And it walks through her, like a typical weekend for her. And it's funny because I see these women who are in their 30s or 40s, and they're so depressed. They're so lonely, and they want desperately to have a man. They want desperately to have a relationship, a marriage. And yet at the same breath, they will call themselves a feminist, or the next day they will be walking around in the Women's March with a pussy hat on their head, talking to guys about, why they need to be feminists or how many more demands men have to live up to in order to, comply with the Me Too movement. And you can't have it both ways. And these are the women that have, prioritized work for their 20s and 30s. And, they want to be the big top dog in their law firm or whatever. And they call themselves a feminist, yet they would rather, trade all that by the time they're 40. They would rather do anything to trade all that if they can just have a baby, if they can just, have a family. They would love to be barefoot and pregnant. So which is it? You really can't have it both ways. You can't call yourself a diehard feminist and yet at the same time wish for a family and wish for a man, because there needs to, I believe there needs to be some sort of gender roles. And it just, to me, it's the irony is laughable that you say that chivalry is misogynistic, or you say, where are all the good men? Where are all the good men? Feminism stamped out the goodness in men. And that's just the irony of me. It's just hilarious for me to see that. It's hilarious, but it's also sad that women are, in their 50s or 40s and with their cats, or women have divorced perfectly good men and their men have moved on and they've now found a new wife because it's different for men. Whereas the women who divorce these perfectly good men for bullshit reasons are still, single and 60 and have cats, and like, why did you divorce the guy again? Yeah, there was no good reason for that.
Yeah,
so long way.
I would agree. No, and that's fine. So, I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because that's one of the things that when I talk to people in my dojo series, I talk about how to know when the relationship is over is when the investment stops rather than when she leaves. And one of the things that I talk to men about is I say, look, you deserve to have standards, and your standards should be relevant. And so even with women that I've dated, I've said, what do you bring to the table other than your pussy? What do you offer? What are you offering in trade other than sex, other than your sexuality? And I look at it from a level that, if she's not mutually invested, if she's not being responsible, if she's not contributing to my life in some positive way, and all she's going to do is give me shit tests, well, there's the door. Don't let it hit you, because there's 5 others like you down the road. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that. And, a lot of feminists are like, oh, well, you're right. They're like, well, MGTOW men, they can't get laid. They can't do this. They can't do that. I know guys that they own their own companies. I know a guy right now who he is filming a documentary. He's a multimillionaire. He's funding it himself. I know another guy who's MGTOW who owns, he's the sponsor of the show, The Dollhouse, #ShowAlert. He runs a sex doll company. He's flown around the world, self-made man. I know a bunch of people in addition to that who are very financially well off. They've been very successful, and they've walked away. They've said, cash me out. I'm not going to play a rigged game. I'm not going to get into a situation where a woman is going to divorce rape me, whether it's through a legit divorce rape or whether it's through a false domestic violence claim or a false rape accusation, where then, she can go take my shit. I just don't want to necessarily be a part of that. And even though I'm horny or whatever, I might as well fire and forget rather than try to invest in a relationship. So a lot of men, when it comes to that, they may still sleep with women occasionally. But for the most part, when it comes to relationships, they've left the building. And I think that's a huge issue that a lot of people don't get. And what's funny is that, in the MGTOW community, one of the things we discuss is the stated community versus the unstated community. And what I mean by that is the stated community of MGTOW is probably, I'd say, somewhere between 100 and 200,000, maybe 150,000 being conservative. But the unstated MGTOW community is in the tens of millions. And these are the men around the world who, they're part of Western society, but they've checked out of marriage. They may not even know what the MGTOW acronym means, but they're like, they see reality in front of them. They've watched their friends, they've watched their loved ones, they've watched people get divorce raped, or they're raised, like the younger guys, they're raised by a single mom. They've watched the way that their single mom treats the people around them, and they're like, holy shit, I don't want any part of that. So it's frustrating on both sides.
Yeah, I absolutely think it's frustrating. And by the way, some of the people in the chat room were wondering if I can see their chats. And yes, I can see everyone that's going on and talking in the chat room. So yeah, I think that
just as kind of an FYI before we move on, guys, if you're in the chat and you have a question for DeAnna, feel free to ask those questions now. Roseblades is going to be collecting those questions for us, and then I will be voicing those questions during the Q&A session of the stream. But if you guys have questions you want to just shout out now, just put question in caps and brackets, who the question is to, and then what the question is. The other thing that I would say is, because the questions are being collected in chat, please do not ask multi-part questions because there's a character limit for the question, number one. And number two, I don't want to miss anybody else's questions. So I want to give everybody a chance to ask the questions that they have, or to be able to, make the comments that they have. I have turned down Moobot and the mods in the chat. I do see some mods there today. Shout out to Broccoli, shout out to Grizzly. Appreciate you guys keeping an eye on things. But I just wanted to make sure that, everybody has the opportunity to ask the questions there, and that everybody's being, somewhat reasonable. So there you go. Okay. Broccoli, what a great question. Smartass. So, but with that, in mind, you did mention something earlier that I thought was interesting, and I'm going to go ahead and touch on it because you brought it up.
Sure.
You brought up women in voting. Talk to me about that.
Oh, okay. So I've done some, since I've been having my podcast and doing my book and everything and speaking out about the toxicity of feminism and the rampant, the widespread misandry going on, I've been, really attacked by feminists a lot in the last year. And I've been doing some other kinds of independent research, like when I've left comments on Tony Robbins' Twitter page when he went and spoke out against Me Too movement. I said, I applaud you for that. I think you're the only one brave enough to actually speak out, and I'm happy that you did. And then I got just relentlessly attacked by feminists. And, throughout the last year or so, I've always known this, but I've just gotten more and more evidence that that women are proving themselves to be, not all women, but most, actually all feminists, let's just say that, are proving themselves to be completely irrational, totally irrational. They don't seem to make any logical decisions. It's all based on emotion. And they have proven themselves to be some people who just follow groupthink. They follow the herd, whatever the popular opinion is, or whatever celebrity talking head tells them to think, they will think it. And there's no rhyme. There's just no rationality behind their thought processes. And when we vote, we're making decisions that's going to affect our whole country, right? We're going to literally change the country with our votes. So we should only empower those who are intelligent, reasonable, and rational people to vote and change the outcome of our country. So I feel that the voting laws were put in place for a good reason. Women also, let's say it's on a woman's period, right? And women, biologically, they're going to change their hormones and be more emotional, more sensitive during the times of their period. once a month, right? So we just can't have that. Just like I don't really think women should be in the military. We can't have something that's at stake. Our country is at stake. Our laws are at stake with people who are going to be so emotional like that. And I think feminists are proving every time they open their mouths that they're totally irrational. So I don't think that they should be allowed to vote. And I think that if we went back to the day where women were not allowed to vote, and I don't even know if a lot of men should be voting these days. Personally, I don't, a lot of, I would say very liberal men also fall into the same category. They base their decisions on emotion and not logic. I don't think that should be acceptable. And so I do think
it's funny you bring that up. If I can interject for a second. Sure. It's funny you bring that up. I co-host a show or two shows with Turd Flinging Monkey. And what's interesting is that we've talked about this in detail, and it's my view that unless you're a net taxpayer, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. Because if you're living off the public dole or you're living off off of some kind of welfare, you shouldn't be allowed to vote yourself more welfare. I mean, the goal of welfare, don't get me wrong, there's going to be that small percentage of people that legitimately need it. But, if you're 500 pounds and you're eating a dozen donuts 3 meals a day, maybe you shouldn't be collecting disability. And, maybe nobody else should be paying for your donut fetish. And so I look at that and I said, okay, so it doesn't matter if you're male or female. If you're not a net taxpayer, you shouldn't vote. And more importantly, if you weren't in the military, you shouldn't vote for the commander in chief. So you shouldn't be able to vote for the president. But if you're a net taxpayer, you can vote for Congress. Now, if you're a net taxpayer and you're a military veteran, then you can vote for president and Congress if you see the way that works. But because the idea is that in every country that it's been tried, the welfare state always fails. And it's funny because feminists are like, well, we're still fighting for equality and we're still fighting for freedom and we need these socialist policies and this and that. And I give them two examples. I'm like, look, I run my channel, I run my book, I run my life off of verifiable facts and observable reality. And when you look at the observable reality, you don't have to look any farther than Sweden to know that feminists fucked up. You don't put them in power. Sweden is going to absolute shit. I did a video on it recently called Death of a Nation, where I talk about how Sweden is dying. And then recently, they've even said that they're going to be deploying their entire Home Guard, which is their version of National Guard. They're deploying all battalions because they have so many no-go zones. There's like 60 no-go zones in their country. And again,
you shouldn't have one no-go zone in your country, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah. And the second example I use is Venezuela, where the socialist Venezuelan doctors and lawyers are going to Colombia and are becoming prostitutes and sucking dicks so that they can at least get a burrito or some food. And that when they went to medical school or they went to law school, they weren't like, gee, when I grow up, I want to suck dicks for scraps when I get my degree. Right. But socialism, it destroys everything it touches. And anytime you have a welfare state, anytime that you advocate for socialist welfare or communist style policies, and this includes universal basic income, you're asking for trouble because the money just doesn't come out of thin air. Somebody at some point is going to have to pay for it. And if you are a purple pill power bottom, which is like what I call guys that they try to be red pill, they pretend they're red pill, they got the tribal tattoo, they go to the gym all the time, they got low body fat percentage, and then when nobody's looking, they're smoking coke. Nothing against homosexuals, but if you're homosexual, don't be in the closet. Just embrace your sexuality and move on with your day. But my point is that they act like they're macho, they act like that, but when the chips are down, they're like, well, fuck, I left my dick in my purse. I can't make that decision right now. My spine is on layaway and it's not due off for another month. And it's like, well, shit, no, it's not a take-home test. You make the fucking decision now. And you become an adult about it and you accept responsibility for your actions. And you see, again, a lot of these effeminized men. You see a lot of these women that have these multi-generational problems where, maybe they were grandchildren of second wave feminists, and you can see the mental health degradation throughout the generations. And a lot of this stuff, it happens. And I agree with you completely in the fact that there's going to be some kind of societal collapse. I don't think that there's any way to avoid it unless more people look at what the reality is on the ground and look at observable reality for what it is. But even then, I think it's just going to be a question of those people who get through it compared to those people who don't, if that makes sense. So I know I kind of tirade a little bit, but that's kind of, I agree with you on the voting issue.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's, I think if anything, that the feminists are constantly proving that they're totally irrational and they cannot be trusted and they shouldn't be in leadership positions, actually. And once again, that's where I feel that the patriarchy was put into place for a good reason. I've looked at places, I've worked at places before and been a part of different seminar programs and everything, personal development programs. And I've witnessed places that are run by men and then places that were run by only women. And again, facts and observable reality. I haven't seen too many places that were just run by women that were really run effectively. And I just do think that men tend to have better leadership, better managerial skills than women do. And also not to mention that most of the time when women are striving so hard to be in these leadership positions because they're told from kindergarten up now that women should be ruling the world. Women are the future. It's all about women in leadership. By the time they reach 40 or 35, they want to actually have their feminine nature tends to kick in because it's always there, but it's just been suppressed because of all this, toxic cultural brainwashing that's going on. So their feminine nature tends to finally kick in, and they do want to have children. They do want to have a husband. They do want to give love. But at that point, honestly, a lot of these feminists are too far gone. Their ideology is so mentally deranged that they would probably never make a good wife. A lot of them, they probably wouldn't make a good mother, or their sexual value has dropped so much that it's going to be harder for them to find a man. But it's very true that, where was I going with that? It's very true that the society, especially again, feminism has just really ruined it. And it's also ruined it for good women. There's a lot of women, and I know men don't want to believe this in MGTOW, but and someone was asking me in the chat room about facts. The reason why I'm not going over tons of sources and facts is because it is all in my book. There's I think there's 12 pages of footnotes in my book, over 170 footnotes in my book. So it's very well cited.
And just so everybody knows, she cites my book, so it can't be all bad.
Yeah, exactly. I cite so it can't be all bad. No, there's Men on Strike. There's the War Against Boys and Men in my book. There's a lot of Jordan Peterson in my book, Paul Elam, The Red Pill, Cassie J. There are a lot of, the whole book is basically like a giant red pill, but mostly for women. And what was I saying? And so there's all your favorite characters are probably in my book, or favorite experts and authors. So that's why I'm just going to save some time and not cite everything right now in this section. But I can very much understand why men have gone MGTOW, because there's just a lot of horrible women out there. There are a lot of women that are completely indoctrinated with feminist ideology. And I see it all the time with a lot of my clients. They leave perfectly good men in shambles, in financial ruins. They take their children away. And then there's a lot of women these days, too, that are completely unattractive and undesirable because they walk around with, blue hair and pink armpit hair, and they don't want to shave. They don't want to look good or keep in good shape because of the patriarchy. And they're screaming obscenities at these women's marches. No one's going to find that attractive. And then they have the gall to write, feminist articles like 10 things to ask men on your first date to find out if he's a feminist. Any man would run away screaming for that.
Well,
so
and to add a little bit more to that, I want to quote one of the MGTOW greats. I want to quote Paul Proteus. And here's a pro tip for all these women that are out there that can't find a man, or they're having a hard time finding a man. Paul Proteus does a video called Hypergamy Floats. And in it, he has this quote that's gold, and I'm going to paraphrase it. But basically, he says, there isn't a master's degree or PhD in the world that will get a man's dick hard.
Exactly.
So when it comes to, these women that are out there and they're like, well, their goal to be stronger women is to parrot being a man.
Yeah.
They cut their hair short. They wear their pantsuits. They do all men. Listen, men already have a solution for wanting a person who is more manly. It's called being gay. So,
yeah.
So women do better when they become feminine than when they become a man. And I don't know, obviously there's a lot of dissent in the MGTOW community between the NAWALT and the AWALT argument. But my argument is this. If you line 10 women up against a wall and 2 of those women are unicorns, they are the women that would become the perfect wife. And 4 of those women are superpower thoughts. These are the women that, they spread their legs with the wind. And then you have these other women that could go either direction, or maybe they've made some mistakes, or maybe, they're just trying to figure it out. You put a man and you point out these women to the man, he's not going to know which is which. But what he will know is that those 4 superpower thoughts, whichever 4 they are, they're going to divorce rape him. They're going to falsely accuse him of stuff. They're going to emotionally abuse him. They're going to bring more problems than solutions to the relationship. And eventually, they will gaslight him and they will cause him to question himself. And I think when men look at it like that and they realize, it's like walking through the Everglades, right? You walk through the Everglades, everything is great. You're going to have to row your boat around a little bit, but there are fucking alligators there. Do you really want to get eaten by a goddamn alligator? Well, no. So you don't go to the fucking Everglades.
I know. And it is really, really hard. And so my heart, and I say this repeatedly in my book, and again, the book, I just want to make it very clear. And you guys can watch, if you don't believe me, you can watch all my videos on my YouTube channel too. I mean, it's clear that I put the onus on women, and the heavy lifting to repair this, if it can be repaired at all, is on women. They broke the social contract, and they are the ones that are making themselves undesirable and participating in all this rampant misandry. But at the same time, so I completely get why MGTOW is going their own way and why this is happening. It's rational. But at the same time, I do believe that not all women are like that. And yes, maybe 2 out of 10 are like that, or 2 out of 10 are not every woman is like that, but I know Walt, but I do know men that are happily married, and I do know men that are, happy fathers, and they have a happy marriage, and they did find their unicorn, even though it's right. And when they do, it does get people, it makes them feel more fulfilled than if they were just living the single life. And they were just being unattached their whole life, and they die in their grave 80 years old and single. So I believe there's a couple things to this issue. And gosh, I would love a follow-up interview, because there's so many like rabbit holes I want to go down right now.
Of course.
And
I'm happy to do some follow-on interviews. That's fine.
Yeah, there's so many rabbit holes. I'm trying to choose which rabbit hole I want to go down right now. For number one of the steps that I outline to getting things back on track with men and women, even if that is a possibility at all, is we need to change the laws. I mean, there's no question about it. We need to have more equitable marriage and child, laws for men. And they're not. The laws, the system is gynocentric. It's completely, it's completely favoring women, and at the huge expense of men. So it is, women get so much more out of a marriage if they were to end the marriage than men. And the financial incentives for women to divorce are much greater than men. Men will lose much more than women do as it stands right now. And they can, lose their children, they can lose their home, their finances, and then their best friend and lover all in one shot, all for like a bullshit reason, like, oh, I just wasn't feeling it anymore, or I'm not, I need to go find myself. I've seen so many women say, need to go find myself. So you can go find yourself and you just leave your husband and family in the shambles. I mean, those things are such bullshit. And then a man still has to pay alimony and child support. That's total garbage.
Well,
So,
and I always say that commitment starts where desire stops.
yeah,
A lot of people, I mean, a lot of people, and I know that I had a conversation with Michael Combs, who's a documentarian, just recently, is a prior video that I've uploaded. And one of the things he talks about is the happiness trap, where people go out of their way and they're talking about, oh, I have to go be happy, or I have to go find myself, or I have to, be self-actualized. The wisest thing about life was told to me by a friend of mine when I was probably 16 years old. And he said, life is like a bowl of oatmeal with raisins and lumps. And what he meant by that is that life is bland. Most days are just kind of, they're kind of meh. And some days they're fantastic. That's what the raisins are meant for. And for those people who don't like raisins, you're wrong. And then the lumps are obviously the hard parts of life where, it always happens. You always have challenges in life. And so I tell people, say, look, if you're going to work and you stop at a red light, and you're like, shit, I have a red light. You say, fuck it, and turn around and go home because it's a red light. No, you fucking wait for the light to turn green and you drive on through. It's like if it's raining outside your house and you walk outside, you're like, shit, it's raining. Do you go back in? No, you can't control the rain. But what you can do is you can prepare for it. You can mitigate it. You can take steps to deal with it. You can leave for work a little bit earlier so if you have extra red lights that you can get where you're going. It's the same thing with relationships. The same. We apply these common sense attitudes, this common sense adaptability to every aspect of our life. We apply it to work. We apply it to hobbies. We apply it to our own self-improvement. But we do not apply it to relationships. Yeah. And more importantly, those people who speak out and say, yeah, that's what we want to do, those are the people who get demonized. Those are the people who get attacked. And the challenge is not necessarily, in my opinion, it's not necessarily dealing with the relationship piece. The relationship is easy. I could go out and start a relationship with somebody tomorrow. I could go out and maintain that relationship. The question is, how does that relationship break down? And more importantly, like you were saying before, the laws need to be changed. Well, the reason the laws got so bad is because of the Duluth model. And what the Duluth model says is that every man is a perpetrator and every woman is a victim. Now, here's what makes the Duluth model so insidious. The Duluth model is required. It's required training in at least 33 states. It is the most commonly used domestic violence intervention program in the world. This means that every judge, every police officer, every prosecutor, every attorney who works in family law, every family law professional, no matter what they do, they are all going through this Duluth model training. Even worse, if you work for a big corporation like Google or Facebook or Boeing or Lockheed Martin or Ford, their sexual harassment training is based on the Duluth model. The United States military trains its soldiers in the Duluth model. Now, let me tell you why it's so insidious. It's so insidious, and I did a video on this about the Duluth model. Duluth is in the title. You can search for it. It's a 15-minute video. I cite Ellen Pence, who is one of the founders of the Duluth model. And she admits in a college textbook, I think it was either 1999 or 2001. It's a publicly available college textbook. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. One of my mods, if you get this, if you could post a link to that video in the chat for the people that are there, that would be great. Because this is important. Ellen Pence admits to committing fraud in the creation of the Duluth model. She admits that what they did was they said, well, here's the thing. They said, we are going to change the idea of he gets power when he beats me or when he attacks me, as opposed to he beats me and attacks me to obtain power. Now, that difference is not semantic. It's ideological in nature, because what it does is it creates a malintent where no malintent exists. And I've spoken with police officers who were around. One of the guys is one of my mods. His name is the Plumber. He was a police officer who was a cop when the Duluth model was implemented. And he said, look, all the officers around me, we all were having challenges with the enforcement of the Duluth model because it violates people's civil rights. You see, the most insidious thing about the Duluth model is this. In addition to the fact that all men are perpetrators and all women are victims, it created the Civil Domestic Violence Protection Order. And what that does is that allows a woman to accuse a man of a crime in a civil setting. And when she does it, the woman, it is the silver bullet of divorce. And when she does it, she is able to take the man's home. She's able to loot his bank account. She's able to take his car. She's able to force him to give up his Second Amendment rights to own firearms. And in addition to that, he gets no due process because it's a civil case. So he gets no Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. He gets no right to confront his accuser. He gets no right to a speedy trial of a jury of his peers. He gets no right to counsel. And she has an attorney. She's going to go to a domestic violence organization. Feminism is a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States alone. So she's going to have an attorney. She's going to have legal advice. Even if they don't come with her, they'll fill out the paperwork. They will take care of her from start to finish. They will even conduct their own parallel investigation just to make sure that she gets the relief she's requesting. And then in addition to all of that, he doesn't get any of his constitutional rights. He gets no due process rights. So now you don't even have an independent agency investigating these things. And now I'm not saying that our system's perfect. I want to make sure that's abundantly clear. I understand that there are crooked police officers just as much as there's crooked gas station attendants and crooked attorneys and crooked whatever. We always have some bad apples in every barrel. But what I am saying is that law enforcement is in the best position to investigate these crimes. We have had these agencies there forever. When you accuse someone of a crime, God damn it, you better be filing a police report. You better be following up. You better be going to that prosecutor and saying, why aren't you prosecuting? And you better be sitting in court and involved in the process to put these people in jail. Because the thing that people don't understand is this. For people that are actually domestic violence perpetrators, for people that are actually rapists, and for people that are actually child rapists, they will continue to fucking do it as long as they are on the streets to handle it. And when you go after a man in civil court and you violate his rights and you do all these things, not only are you going after innocent men, but you're telling guilty men you're not going to jail. And then what you're doing is when these guilty men don't go to jail, then what happens is actual rape victims, like my oldest daughter, they never get to see justice. So the challenge here is that when you talk about repealing the laws and the way the laws are changed, she admitted to fraud. It's a federal fraud. VAWA is based on the Duluth model. The Violence Against Women Act is based on the Duluth model. And Ellen Pence has admitted it in a public college textbook that has just been linked. It's called Coordinating Community Responses to Domestic Violence. And by the way, it's in chapter 2. She wrote the entire chapter. She admits that it's being a complete fraud. There is no reason that this should stand. And the reality is that, again, if you're getting hit or you're getting assaulted by someone, you should be going to the police, and the police should grab that guy. They should handcuff him. They should miss that back door 4 or 5 times as they run him into the car and then put him in and then deal with it. And to kind of dovetail this a little bit, and then I'll quit ranting. I have one of my followers is he's a college student in the state of California, and I'm not going to say which college because I don't want to dox him. He showed me it's like a rape sexual assault prevention brochure. You know, it's like the whole rape, the whole DV. This is what you do. It's a 3-page trifold with lots of words all the way through. And you know the one thing that they didn't say?
What?
Call the police. It was call the DV hotline, call the sexual assault hotline, go to the counselor, go everywhere except for the one agency that can help you.
That's disgusting.
It truly is. And here's the thing. This promiscuity culture has made it so that now, I mean, Sweden just passed a law the other day where now, unless you do yes means yes, all sex is rape.
It's disgusting. I mean, this is what they're teaching them in college campuses and even younger and younger, you know, handing out these pamphlets that one out of 4 of you are going to be raped in your life. And, you know, just it's putting all the onus on men, yet, you know, women actually rape or commit sexual violence at almost the same rate as men do. Right. Women sexually harass men too. I mean, women are the perpetrators too. Women abuse men in domestic violence at the same rate, if not even a little bit more, the numbers in my book, as men do, they found out. Of course, all these stats are extremely buried, and you have to go, you have to go really looking for these stats to find them. But it's disgusting that women are, there's few women that are actually speaking out about this. Few women are actually speaking out about this insanity, this insane misandry towards men and abuse of men. And more women really need to, because it's a disgrace. I mean, it's morally repugnant that people are allowing this to happen. And, they're walking around and, marching, and so passionately marching for illegal immigrants to have the right to stay here, or they're passionately marching for transgender rights or, Muslim rights. But yet here we are in our own backyard, supposed to be our friends, our allies, our partners in life, which are men, and women could care less about this misandry and abuse that's been going on with our own friends. They're supposed to be our friends. We're supposed to be our helpmates for each other. God made us each other's helpmate. And yet they're just abandoning men in the dust, and then not even believing that this misandry is going on. It is nothing less than morally repugnant.
Right. I would agree completely. But I'll tell you what, we've been going for almost an hour, and there are quite a few questions. Wanted to shout out to Rose again. Rose Blades, thank you for collecting the questions. And going there. And also, I think that just kind of as an aside, DeAnna, I think that we should stream again. I really enjoyed the stream so far. And I think
so many more points that we didn't even get to go through.
Oh, yeah.
I would love. Yeah. Maybe this is just an intro chat, meet and greet.
We'll see. Mm-hmm. So, all right. So we have some questions here. Now, guys, if you have any questions, just so you know, and obviously, DeAnna, you probably heard this in the beginning of the stream. I have a thing. There's points that people can play little games on Twitch to earn points to ask questions. Every streamer calls their point something different. I call it Bukkake Choke Slam. There's a little bit of a story behind it. For those that don't know, we were sitting in Discord one night and we were all coming up with wrestling moves. Of course, none of us were sober. I decided to come up with the Bukkake Choke Slam as my signature move. And we all joked and laughed about it, and it became a thing. So now I've adopted it in the channel. So viewers can earn Bukkake Choke Slams so that they can ask questions, but I don't think it's working correctly. So I'm not actually going to be checking that. So if you use the Bukkake Choke Slams, guys, viewers, women, whoever, I'm not going to be looking at those today because I know they were broken as of a couple weeks ago. And no, I was not very sober at all, Apoc. I remember you were there. But with that in mind, if you have a question, feel free to put question in caps and brackets in the chat. And then what we'll do is Rose will collect those questions, shoot them over to me, and I will go ahead and ask them. So we're going to start the Q&A now, and I'm going to go ahead and shut off the video for the Skype so that our guest can let her hair down, and then we'll go ahead and go through the questions. All right. So with that in mind, all right. The first question is from Neurosis51. I know DDJ usually states this, but the structure of the questions. Okay. He's just telling us what the question is. Yes. Neurosis, you had it right. It's caps and brackets and then who the question is addressed to. Next question is from Cassio. DeAnna, what do you think about sex dolls?
That's a great question. And again, that's in my book too. I love how we address everything. So I feel that it's going to be the end of society. I mean, that's going to be the end of probably romantic relationships between men and women and marriage, and its population control as well. So I think it's a very, very sad and dangerous state when we introduce sex dolls into society, because there's going to be very vulnerable men who are maybe incels or in MGTOW. And, of course, they need to have their needs met. So they may be prone to getting sex dolls. And then once they do, it's just like porn. It's going to be addicting. And then, of course, it takes away the natural motivation to go out and meet real women or have real relationships or families when you're getting a very compliant, friendly, sweet woman at home who is much nicer to you than a feminist and is easier to have sex with. So I'm against sex dolls, of course. Being someone who's pro relationships and the family unit, I am against it. However, I have a very stern warning in my book. If women don't, step the F up and go against this feminist grain and actually speak out and start helping men change these laws. And if they don't start making themselves, really branching themselves away from the feminist movement and embracing their femininity, being more desirable to men, being more supportive and appreciative of men, genuinely, not as a ploy, not as some sort of an act to get them to the plantation, but really make themselves known. The good women of the world are out there. I want them to make themselves known. And if they don't, then yes, this country is going to go to hell in a handbasket, in a sex doll basket, and men will be pretty vindicated. It will be pretty rational for them to go to the sex doll route, because why would they waste time with a woman who is nasty and rude to them? And it's such an effort to get a woman in bed who is nasty and rude to them, right? And then who also has unfair laws for marriage and children. So yes, again, the onus is mostly on women to shape up and speak out against the feminist narrative, or else this is one of the things that in the next 5 years will cause society to collapse, I believe.
Well, and I also want to underscore a couple things too. For men to choose the dead lay that is a sex doll, it's a serious issue. And they've done studies where they've said that 1 in 4 men will be willing to sleep with a sex doll. That's even today with all the social taboos that are there. I think that the big challenge is going to be, though, is I think that sex dolls are going to kill feminism. I don't think that every man is going to choose a sex doll. I mean, some men like to be ridden. So, it is what it is. But at the same token, I think that a lot of men are turning to sex dolls because at the end of the day, they're a lot less expensive an investment in a year than it is being with a woman, especially since the CDC has been saying for the last 10 years that the United States is in the middle of an STD epidemic. And I think in the last 6 months, they've now discovered a new drug-resistant strain of HIV that they're just absolutely terrified about, rightly so. And I say that because you live in dog shitistan and because California has passed a law decriminalizing giving people HIV. Obviously, that's a huge issue. And I do agree that sex dolls will potentially lead to a collapse, and it will be the final death knell for feminism. But there'll definitely be a steep price to pay when that sort of thing comes through it.
Totally. And I also I saw someone ask me if I'm against dildos. And yes, I'm very much against dildos and vibrators. And I've been saying that for a while. I think that's just a crutch. And women are making themselves addicted to something that isn't really natural. I mean, no man, no porn star man even can even duplicate the mannerisms of a vibrator or dildo, really. And so what you're doing is you're getting addicted to something that's unnatural and that takes away motivation to go out and find a real man, have a real relationship, family, and marriage. And,
especially if those dildos or vibrators are attached to a drill or have a pull starter or something like that.
It's just I'm very much natural. I'm really into like human nature and how God created us. He designed us extremely intelligent, whether you believe in God or not. I'm not like some crazy Bible thumping Christian, but I do have Christian principles. And I believe that he is very intelligent in how he designed us. And even the nature of men and women and how we are naturally attracted to each other is actually pretty simple and easy. It's the society and it's our new culture that's created such barriers between us now that's made it so difficult. Women are feminists. There is a difference between real women and feminists, but feminists are going completely against their nature. And it is not natural for a woman in her 40s to be, masturbating and, to their dildo on Friday nights and hooking up with random guys with a revolving door and partying and working like a man. It's just not natural. It's against our nature. So why fight with nature? And also why fight with nature? I think women, sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but men should be in a leadership role. And I think that they should be in more of a leadership role with women. And women should be more of the primary caretakers at home. This is nature. I think men perform best when they have more of a purpose and they are relied upon a little bit more and they feel better about themselves. They tend to, is what I've heard. And women feel better when they're around their children and they get to provide support and love to their men. Why are we fighting with nature? When we fight with nature, look what happens. Society collapses and men and women are unhappy.
Okay.
For long or two, no. Yes, I think that I'm very against dildos as well.
All right, perfect. Okay, so this next question is from Dive2663225. And I think you've already answered this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I think it's already been answered. And Dive, if you missed the answer to this question early on the stream, you'll be able to catch it when it uploads. But again, I just want to make sure that I acknowledge that you did ask the question. It says, DeAnna, big question. After all women have done, you're expecting men to sit. After all women have done, you're expecting men to stick their neck out, despite how men have been prosecuted. I don't think that she says that. And she said early on that most of her criticism is directed at women and telling women that they have to fix the problem rather than men, which I think is interesting because Jordan Peterson at one point shamed MGTOW and shamed a lot of men for not stepping up to the plate. And then he had an interview just a few months ago with Camille Paglia, who is an old secular feminist.
My book too.
Well, what's interesting about that interview is that he actually admits men can't fix the problem. So people can tell you to man up all they want, but until women solve the problem, it's not going to get solved. And I would agree with that sentiment completely. So with that in mind, let's move to the next question. This is from Eddie Cade. Question for the guest. What is your definition of love if it has to be made great again?
If it has to be made great again. Well, I think that the nature, when I talk about making love great again, I think about my grandparents. Okay. My grandparents are my favorite role model for a beautiful relationship. And they were married 63 years until my grandfather just passed away a couple months ago. And their relationship is very inspiring because it wasn't perfect. I mean, by gosh, they had their ups and downs and their fights and everything, but they stuck through it. And there are certain principles that they lived by, like commitment, ride or die, thick or thin commitment and loyalty. And they did have certain gender roles. I mean, my grandmother was very feminine, but she was also very feisty, strong. She made her opinion heard. She was definitely no pushover, but there was a respect, a huge amount of respect mutually from her to him, from him to her. And it was a way, a kind of an illustration of gender roles working. It wasn't chauvinistic. It wasn't, it wasn't something like we see out of Islam, but it was just a beautiful manifestation of gender roles working. And gosh, they loved each other so much and were so passionate about each other. And they stuck through it. And I think that what we've lost in our time are the respect of how gender is supposed to work as a team. I think a harmonious relationship between men and women. We have differences. There's scientifically proven differences, and we should love those differences. I'm happy I'm not a man, and I love the differences that men provide. And there's certain assets that I provide as a woman. So, back in the day, we had that understanding of gender differences and appreciation and celebration of them. We celebrated men's masculinity. We encouraged it. We didn't discourage it and we didn't shame it. We also celebrated femininity and motherhood. So there were so many things about back in the day that it worked better. We worked as the synergistic complementary team that we were designed to be. Now, it's completely lopsided. Women are trying to compete for power with men, and they're trying to compete for leadership when, again, that just doesn't work. You can't compete for the same role on a team. You can't both compete for leadership. So that's what I talk about making love great again. It's restoring that same sense of understanding of our differences, having it work for us instead of working against it, and going back to our human nature a little bit. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. How to attract a woman and how to attract a man, and then how to make a relationship and love work. It's not rocket science. I think it's very easy, but it goes back to our human nature. So that's what I mean by that. I hope that clarifies it.
I think it does. Yeah. All right. So let's go to the next important question. Now that we know that you're not a trap, Secret MGTOW asks, and this is a two-part question, so I'm going to allow it because it's short. Are you married and how old are you?
I'm not going to say my exact age. I'm somewhere between 30 and 33. Okay. That's my age. And I don't like to say my exact age. I just don't. And I'm not married. And I've been looking for a husband. And I think that I've been very reasonable in what my search has been. I certainly want to be married and I would love to have a family. And I see some people laughing at that. I would love to be married. I think that in a way, I hate victimhood, and I don't want to call myself a victim of feminism, but I think feminists have given real women a very bad name. And I am not interested in like random hookups with guys. I've never been interested in that. I have always been interested in men with more conservative values. And that's been really hard for me to find in California. So,
well, yeah,
and it's
that's
also
because all the men in California are hooking up with each other.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking for a special kind of man, but like my last boyfriend, he was slightly overweight. He was 8 years older than me. I mean, there's nothing you would look at his picture and think, oh, he's definitely an average guy. I'm not looking for a Chad whatsoever. But and everyone keeps talking about me hitting the wall. I've been looking for a partner for years now. So I wouldn't say that it just occurred to me to start looking for a man as I'm hitting the wall. So no, I think that I'm very reasonable with my expectations and what I'm looking for. But some guys, I think that they're a little bit confused these days too. And I think men have a hard time understanding their role. Like my last boyfriend, he just went the super biblical route, and it was either like all or nothing. Like, let's do all of the Bible 100% right now. And there's no room for us to kind of continue our relationship like it was, or it's off, everything is off. So there's a lot of, I don't know. It's just kind of, I guess it's hard for me to find someone that I really connect with on multiple levels.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's go to the next question here. I got a couple repeat questions here.
Yeah. Someone also asked me, everyone keeps accusing me of hitting the wall, and I'm only doing this lately and stuff. And I mean, again, you can believe whatever you want to believe in your head. That would be fictional and irrational because you're making stories up in your head and then believing it with no facts. But as I say in my book and in my videos and for a long time, I grew up with 4 brothers and almost all males in my extended family. I don't have any sisters, and I don't have a lot of female friends because of that. I have some female friends, but I like the company of males because I feel like men are more rational and just easier to get along with. And I've never, ever agreed with the feminist ideology. So I've never identified myself as a feminist. I've always understand, what men have been going through. And it's been just the last few years that I've been able to speak out about it. And it's been many ways.
Let's switch gears just a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to continue with the Q&A because I understand that you want to address the audience as well. Part of the reason I do the Q&A is so that if people actually have questions, they can ask them. But also, I think that your answer dovetails into this next question pretty nicely. This is from Trill Boson, and it says, do you have any examples of a woman's hypergamy backfiring?
Do I have any examples of a woman's hypergamy backfiring?
Yeah.
So, like, if she keeps going for the next level of someone who's, like, more rich, then it backfires at her?
Well, hypergamy in general is basically a woman choosing the best mate for financial, social, and procreation access. So, most of the time, it's definitely, finances have a position there. But the alpha fucks, beta bucks dichotomy, it's a real thing, and people have seen many examples of it over and over again. So, in other words, when you talk about hypergamy, where maybe a woman will monkey branch from one guy to the next, and then she ends up being by herself. Obviously you date or you coach women in your dating coaching profession. So do you see situations where if a woman does that monkey branch, where she ends up later regretting it or it backfires on her?
Yes, I have. And a lot of women that I work with, and, I feel, I see them in their 40s or even in their 45 or 50s, and they're still saying that they want like the Chad. They want a guy who's in really good shape. It's one of the first things that they mention is his physical appearance. They want a guy who's over 6 foot, who's in really good shape, who makes as much or more than they do, and they're like partner at a law firm, and they're raking in a couple $100,000 a year or $500,000 a year, and those are the first things they say. And to me, that's immediately tells me that they've been doing this their whole life. This is why they're single, because they're not looking for a man's heart, sense of humor. They're not looking in a reasonable way, or even looking at themselves like they're reasonable, because they're clearly, in their 40s and they're still looking for someone who's a Chad. They haven't grown up. They haven't matured as a woman. And yes, I see these women, they're still single in their 50s, still looking for that Chad. And I have to say that too, is there's only a small portion of women that look for a Chad. Not every woman looks for a Chad. And a lot of women are actually turned off by a Chad. I personally am. I don't like Chads.
So, okay. And this next question is from Over the Logic. It's for me. And the question is, would you consider her a trad thought? Well, as TFM and I have always said, if it breathes, it's a thought, which, by the way, is a joke from an anime show for those that don't know. I mean, yeah, at some level, but I think that what's interesting about her argument is that she's placing their onus and responsibility upon women. I mean, the idea here is that the social contract between men and women has been destroyed, and both of us agree that it's feminism and gynocentrism that's done it. And we also agree that men can't fix the problem because it's gotten too bad. It's stage 4 cancer. We also agree that society is on its way to a collapse. So, when it comes to those things, because I think it dovetails in probably the next common question, which may come down is, do I think she's a chameleon? I mean, I think at some level, there's going to be some chameleon that's there. But I also think that at the same token, she's put her money where her mouth is. And if her book says what she's telling us it says, then that's going to be something that it's a horse of a different color, because there are women that are speaking out against feminism and they are trying to solve the problem. But the issue is that the United States alone, feminism is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it is a multi-trillion-dollar industry around the world. And the United States government funds feminism. The Canadian government funds feminism. The Mexican government, every Western government funds feminism. So even if you have individual women who are speaking out, their voice is going to get drowned out by the feminist machine. And I've had a lot of women come to me behind the scenes. I mean, some I've interviewed, some I haven't. And they've all said pretty much the same thing, that feminism is cancer. How do we fix the social contract? And why are men continuing to walk away? And I think the thing that some people are missing here is that, I'm conducting and I agree to this interview, not necessarily because she and I agree on everything, or even if we agree on most things. It's that I want people to understand that everything that TFM and I talk about on the TFM show, everything that I talk about on my channel, and the things that she's talking about on her channels, they are legitimate problems. And even though, she's a woman, and for the MGTOW monks out there, she's considered the enemy. Even she sees what the problem is, and has written a book in an effort to solve it. So, do I think that she?
And why am I a chameleon, though? That's what I don't understand. Why would I be a chameleon if I believed this my whole life? Why would I be a chameleon?
Well, I mean, at some level, women are more chameleon-like than men because they are more socially adept in many ways than most men are. So it's not that that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think that everybody should chameleon at some level. I mean, you act a different way at home than you act at work. You act a different way in mixed company than you act in regular company. But this idea of taking certain things from a standpoint of absolutes, I think at some level, I think is detrimental, because when you start having this black and white thinking on everything as opposed to just some things, you end up creating more problems than you end up solving, and you end up creating unnecessary extremists. So you have guys who, for example, are in the red pill rage and they stay there, and then they become mentally deranged. And then you have women who become feminists, and obviously by default they become, we'll just say, more mentally deranged, because all women are crazy at some level anyway. But apparently that's my, misogynistic patriarchy talking or some shit. I don't know. All right.
No,
So,
I think
but you see my
chameleon.
point, right?
Yeah, but I think a chameleon would be me trying to go this route just to like sell things to you guys or to tailor to the MGTOW or the men's community or something like that. In an effort to change myself. I think that's really what a chameleon probably is, what they're thinking. But if I've believed this my whole life, and I've been, surrounded by wonderful men my whole life with my brothers growing up, and I've hated feminists my whole life, then I don't see how that could be a chameleon. And in fact, I would say that I could easily be a chameleon if I wanted to cater and pander to the feminist community. My business would be soaring right now if I did the whole, hashtag Me Too and, male bashing and joined in on all of that stuff so that I can pander to women. Oh my God. I mean, I would have a kick-ass business, be making so much money because that's what, that's the popular narrative right now. So I don't know. I mean, someone whose business is who has lost business and, in a way committed social and professional suicide by speaking out for the truth and standing up for the truth. I don't know. I mean, that would be kind of a masochistic chameleon.
Okay. Next question. This is from Artemis the Kitten, and it's question to the guest. Based on what you've said, do you advocate for traditionalism?
By traditionalism, do you mean like traditional roles, like women would be more so staying at home with the kids and
Yes.
be more submissive? I would stand for traditional roles if we changed the laws and made divorce and child support and the courts, if they were completely equitable for men and women, because women then would have a lot more at stake if they wanted to get divorced from men. I do think that I don't see how you can really argue with traditionalism because it worked for so long. And I think men do feel better when they're the leader of the house and they're the main provider of the family, whereas women are taking care of the children and taking care of the men, and they're free to be their most feminine self, to bring joy and love to men. And they're then relying mostly on the men, whereas men are mostly relying on the women for children caretaking and for that kind of support. So I think that I think some traditional roles should be there. I think that it definitely works best, but only if we can make the laws and the courts completely equitable to men. Otherwise, it's just not fair, and there's much less for men to gain from it and more for men to lose. Okay. If we can change the system, then I could do that. And I do know a lot of guys, again, that I think that they do enjoy that role, and it's just got to be fair. It's got to be equitable. I'm all about fairness. If it's not equitable, it's not going to be done.
Right. All right. Next question is from B MGTOW Life. And the question is, do you feel any responsibility if one of the relationships you help create destructs, as they tend to do, leaving the man in a soul-rending carnage and a woman disenfranchised with men?
Would I feel responsibility if I helped to create the relationship and then
it failed?
I guess so. Yeah, I would feel, it hasn't happened yet, but I would feel terrible. Yeah, absolutely. I would. But it depends. I mean, I wouldn't typically, if I'm working with a woman, I'm going to give her all the tools I know how to give that is going to help her be supportive of men and appreciative of men and to prevent that breakup from happening. If at the end of the day, she chooses to, act like a typical feminist, and just break up with him and leave him in ruins, I don't know how much that's my responsibility if I've given her my all, to help her prevent that.
Okay. Next question is from Apocrypha. It's, have you seen Karen Straughan's rebuttal to Jordan Peterson's rant against MGTOW?
I have not. No, I've watched a lot of her and Jordan Peterson, but I have not watched that particular one. Okay.
Next question is from Neurosis 51. And the question says, why are you against sex dolls because of relationships when that is a symptom just like porn?
Well, I don't really like porn either, to be honest with you. I think all of those are destroying the fabric of society.
Okay.
I think it's all
I know you touched on this before, so I didn't want you to spend a lot of time on it, but go ahead.
I'm pro relationship and pro the family unit. I think that we are put here to not be on an island, men on one island, women on the other island. We are actually most happiest and fulfilled when we are together. You know, we've done this for millions of years. So I think we're going to see a lot of misery if we really go our own way for the rest of our lives and not have, you know, any offspring, any legacy, etc. So I see porn, I see sex dolls and all those things as just, you know, really ruining the fabric of society.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on incels? This is a question from Dickus Maximus.
I think incels it's really sad to me. That's just another symptom of this culture that is it's pushing sex so much and glorifying sex so much that it's making men feel like a failure and a loser if they don't have sex. And you know, by a reasonable age, 20, 22, you know, like Elliot, it's making men feel like a loser, and it's putting so much pressure on men, even the pickup artist community. So I think it's really sad to me that men are feeling this terrible about not having sex, and it's part of society's pushing it. I also feel that at the end of the day, a lot of incels do want, at deep down, they want more than just sex, or else they can just go get a prostitute every week. I think deep down they want some affection and some love and some emotional connection. And men are deprived of that because they don't really get that naturally with other men and in their life. They can only really get that from women. So I do think that men, you know, I think men, the incels deep down might want more affection and intimacy beyond just sex. And I think that these are all things that should be encouraged in our culture more and discussed. And we should get to the honest root of how guys decide to become incels and why we're even having a conversation. You know, why does MGTOW exist? Why do incels exist? These are all real issues in our society that no one's really addressing in a public sphere. And I think that we need to.
Okay, so I do have a question. I've seen a couple questions about MGTOW and disposability and the plantation. I want to address them all at once. So I think that I think I can reword it in a way to address like 4 or 5 questions that have come in about this. So you're a dating coach. You coach men and women. Now, you have said that earlier in the stream, you said that you understand why men go MGTOW, and it makes perfect sense. Is that a accurate depiction or paraphrase of what you said earlier?
Yeah, I understand why they would want to go MGTOW.
Okay. So my question for you is, for the men that have chosen to go MGTOW, are you trying to get those men to come back to the plantation before anything else gets fixed? Or do you think that women need to fix the male-female social contract and eradicate feminism before these MGTOW men consider it?
I'm not, my book and, you know, what I talk about in my videos and stuff, it's not really for MGTOW guys because they've already said that they've decided to go their own way and they're not interested in women anymore. So I'm not even talking to them. It's, you know, no hard feelings, but I'm not going to logically talk to people that don't want to be talked to. I'm talking to men who
But it's all about me. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
You know, I'm talking to men who are either on the fence or they still have some shred of hope for women or for finding a loving relationship, and they want to still be a father. They want to have a family. These are the men that I talk to. And my issue with it, and so, no, I think that we need to work to make these laws more equitable. And I'm not trying to get MGTOW guys back to the plantation. I don't care about them because they don't care about that. You know, they don't have any hopes for women or going back to having a family. They're done with that, they say. So let them go their own way. What I have the issue with and what I would love is that, you know, they don't just go their own way, though. They go and absolutely trash men who do still have that spark of hope left. And I've seen it, you know, over and over. The level of comments I have to delete, even on my own YouTube channel, is obscene every day because they say the nastiest things. They call me the nastiest things. Any guy who says that they do believe in love or they do want a good woman, or even guys that say they finally found a good woman, instead of being happy for them, they say, oh, it's never going to work. You're an idiot. You're a mangina. You're a pussy. And they go out of their way. They don't go their own way. They go out of their way to to bully guys and bring people down, and they bully women too. So this is what I don't agree with. I hate bullying, and I hate generalizations and irrational behavior. And this is why I can't stand feminists, because they engage in all that misandry and man bashing. But MGTOW guys, many MGTOW guys in the community do just the same kind of antics and behaviors as the extreme feminists do. So I don't, if they're really going to go their own way, then go your own way. But why spend so much of your days engaged in women bashing and men bashing? You know,
well, at some level, I agree with you. I think a lot of the guys that do that, I think they do it from a perspective of, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate here because I'm not quite sure. I think some of them do it from a perspective of red pill rage, you know, where they're still hurt or the emotions are still raw, and they haven't necessarily come out of that red pill rage yet. However, I will say this. Many MGTOW men that are out there, especially other content creators, we don't give a shit about the men that are still wanting the relationships, or they still want to, you know, have hopes that they're going to find their NAWAL, because we understand that not every man is going to be able to accept the MGTOW philosophy and lifestyle. And one of the things that you said that was interesting, and I forget exactly what it was you said before we started the stream today, but you made a comment about the red, you know, why the red pill people, you know, you were saying that you were talking about some of the comments on your streams earlier, and you were saying that you had a question about why some of these, you know, men are making the hateful comments. Again, it's because they're still hurting. You know, in my last stream, I talked about the resources that are available for men. If a man needs help, he has no place to go. There aren't the resources available to him that there are for women. And this doesn't just have to do with feminist funding in the context of charities. This has to do with the way the government system has been formed in such a gynocentric way. And I use the term gynocentric rather than feminist because there are traditionalists and there are conservatives who vote for feminist agendas as well. Because again, they put women above the men in context of, you know, when they're trying to pass laws, and so at the expense of men. That's why when you look at suicide, like over 80% of all suicides, it may be 70%, but I'm just spitballing here, but the majority of suicides, they're men. The majority of homeless are men. The reason that men die earlier than women is because men end up being utilities, and they don't have the ability to take care of themselves. And the example I always use, and I use this in my book as well, is that if a woman needs health information, you know, she wants to figure out how to be healthy, she's, you know, depressed, or she's concerned about domestic violence, or whatever she's concerned about in her physical or mental health, she can go to womenshealth.gov or, you know, any of these other sites that are out there. If men need to go and get that kind of help, there is no menshealth.gov. That website doesn't exist. Right. And so at the end of the day, these men who they're in the red pill rage and they are very upset. Occasionally they do lash out. Now, I do agree that there is I would love it if it was occasionally, but it's daily. Sure, but you also have to remember too that there is an element of guys out there who call themselves MGTOW who aren't. And they're just angry. They hate women. They're collectivist cucks, and they turn around and they pretend to be MGTOW when really they just want to create a cult of personality. And what people forget is this. And this is now I remember what it was we were talking about. You were talking about the MGTOW movement, and you know, what are the goals of the movement, and what are these things that, you know, what's the end game? That was what was asked to me when I spoke to Ashley Collins a few weeks ago. She's like, what is MGTOW's end game? And the reality is there isn't one, in that the movement, the movement is technically organic in nature. Like you don't go to the MGTOW clubhouse and have the MGTOW meeting. You don't sign up for a newsletter. You don't organize. You don't activate. You don't file change.org petitions or hold up signs. Like there was I think it was Vice a couple of years ago, had some like fat idiot wearing like a MGTOW superhero outfit, and he had a protest sign. And I think it was Lauren Southern that was actually interviewing him. And it was a total fraud. It was a complete and total fraud. And it was just like this photo op just to shame and make fun of MGTOW. And even though there's a lot of MGTOW that are out there that are just doing their own thing. They don't give a shit about these women. They don't give a shit about these men that are going and doing their own. They're like, hey, you go do you. I'm going to go do me. And we're going to go from there. The MGTOW men that have gotten through the red pill rage, the majority of them just don't care. Like you look at content creators like Sandman, or you look at like TFM, or you look at Human, or you look at some of these other guys that are well established, like Marcus, for example. A lot of these guys will speak to females and they'll communicate with females throughout their day or whatever they do, but they don't go to other people's channels and just start bashing them for the purposes of bashing them. But that's because, again, these men have become, for all intents and purposes, they've become established in the MGTOW lifestyle, and they've understand their MGTOW philosophy. They're like, I'm going to do me, you do you, and there it is. It's like neighbors, right? You know, you stay over in your yard and I'll stay over in my yard and everything will be fine. And so, but when it comes to this kind of scenario, you see these other people out there who may not be as far on their MGTOW journey, and they feel like they have to turn around and they have to shame everybody else around them. And again, just like feminists do. And so I think that's where a lot of people get that whole, well, MGTOW is bad, or MGTOW is this or that. The reality is that those people are a very vocal minority. Hey guys, just wanted to touch base with you. Looks like OBS took a shit. So gotta love the internet cycling right in the middle of my rant. But at the end of the day, I was just going to say that I think that it's important for people to realize that, you know, when you're going your own way, it's important to go your own way and let people go their other way. But anybody who tries to tell you how to think or what you want to do, ignore them. I always tell people, you know, if you don't give me a grade, you don't sign my paycheck, and you don't suck my dick, your opinion doesn't matter, because, you know, you're not relevant to my life. And that's the point. I think for a lot of men, they, especially the guys that go around and they start making negative comments for the sake of making negative comments, I think that it's one of those scenarios where it's like, you know, yeah, so I mean, we're all a little bit trolly. Even I'll troll occasionally, but I think it's one of those scenarios where you just got to go your own way at the end of the day, and go from there. Now, as far as, you know, those people that aren't MGTOW, not everybody's going to go MGTOW, and I think that you know, hopefully, the social contract between men and women will change to where it becomes worth MGTOW man's investment to, you know, maybe spend some time with a woman, have a relationship with her, maybe have, you know, turn her into a wife and have some kids. I don't see it happening prior to a collapse, but I do see the possibility of it being there. So with that in mind, I do want to say this. I really appreciate you taking the time today, DeAnna, and even with a little bit of an internet hiccup I have, what I'll do is I'll cut and paste both of these videos together so that you know, people can see the entire interview. It may take a little bit long to put up. Feel free to mirror it on your channel once it's up.
Can I say something also?
Yeah, go for it.
So when you were talking about how the it's a minority of men in the MGTOW community that you know, say nasty comments and bring other people down, what I'm saying is I see as it's a majority. This chat stream, for instance, is a living example of that. I have not seen one even semi-nice comment this whole time. I've seen only very nasty comments to me, my physical appearance, you know, saying I'm a post-wall hag. And then even there's just one or two people that have said, you know, for instance, Russ has been saying that he wants to wait for the right one, and he does believe in love. And people immediately started saying, you know, good luck with your future divorce. You know, I feel sorry for you. You're a mangina. This is just, I just think that nastiness is so negative and toxic. I don't know why that is helping with anyone's cause. And this is why, if they ever want the laws to change, it's never going to change with that kind of toxicity thrown in people's faces. You know, people don't make huge changes or even try to fight for something or be motivated to fight for a cause if they're being called an asshole or, a nasty witch or something constantly. No one's gonna fight for your cause for that. And no one's going to be even inspired to do that. So I think it's just falling right into the Marxist divide and conquer agenda of keeping us divided, keeping us hating each other. And I see that, unfortunately, there hasn't been one. I've said very logical things on this stream, and I've never said one negative thing about men, but yet there's nothing that a woman can do to win or to even gain any kind of approval in a MGTOW's eyes. They'll find.
I would agree with that. I think that last statement that you made is absolutely true. I think that when it comes to the men that have chosen to go MGTOW, yeah, a lot of men don't necessarily, they have a hard time hearing a woman's perspective because they feel like the fight has been fought and that everybody has been lost. And so for a lot of these men, it's that they want to find their self-actualization free from a woman or a female's approval. Because most of the people that I speak to in the MGTOW community, they are... they don't think that there's a fight to win, and they're definitely not activists. They know the problem is fucked, but they think that they're taking it from the perspective that this is stage 4 cancer, and society is fucked, and we just got to figure out a way to ride it out until things change, or at least find a way to live complete lives free of gynocentric influence and free of the drama that is now the modern relationship. And I think that that's what people don't understand. And that was one of the things that I wanted to kind of reiterate to you, and I was hoping to talk before the stream went down earlier, is that MGTOW is a movement in that it is organic, but it's not a movement where we have any kind of goals other than to educate men to think and learn for themselves. Because a lot of the men, myself included, we were in unhealthy relationships and we were blue-pilled, and we did, cuck ourselves to our women and go from there. Now there's another whole nother generation of MGTOW and another group of MGTOW who've never been married, and they don't have children. And then there's a younger generation of MGTOW, again, who are just getting out of high school, they're just going into college, and they see how women are and don't want anything to do with them. And it's not that they hate women per se, it's that they understand that the gynocentrism has made women unworthy of communication. And so a lot of the guys that you're seeing in the chat, for them, you being here and being new, and especially being a relationship coach, that you kind of put a bullseye in your head in that, it would be like me walking into a feminist group and having a conversation with feminists. Not saying that you're a feminist or anything like that. I'm just trying to, and I'm not apologizing for them or not apologizing for them. They can speak for themselves. But what I am saying is that there are women in MGTOW circles who do associate with some MGTOW, and they are accepted within that community. But at face value, everybody gets the litmus test. Everybody gets the, for lack of a better term, hazing. And when men bond, they don't bond by doing each other's hair or by doing each other's nails. Or at least most heterosexual men, anyway.
Sure.
Men bond by walking outside and beating the shit out of each other, or it's contests of strength or contests of status or contests of challenges. And so it's F you too, and then all of a sudden you go off and go get a beer. And I think that some of this stuff is, and I see what you're saying is that a lot of the guys, when they taunt, they're the comments here. No, I've been watching them. They're not great.
I know the difference between, I grew up with 4 brothers. I know what taunting is, and I do all of that. I'm very sarcastic. Sure. But I think there's a difference between taunting and taking everything I say out of context. And everything I've said, they've said, oh, she's just a chameleon, or she's just, she's doing that just to sell books. She's doing that to lure people into the plantation. And there's just there's not one thing I can say that actually, there is no way that a woman can ever be, be good with them, or they can never see that there are actually women that agree with them and that are on their side, because everything that we say, they'll twist it into their narrative of, she's wrong because of this, or she's wrong because she believes in traditional gender roles. She's just saying what we want to hear so we can get them. And it's just not true. So I don't know.
And that's why I said without white knighting for you or anything like that. That's why I said, look, you wrote a book about it. You tried to educate people about it. And I think that it's one of those things that, again, every MGTOW speaks for themselves. Every MGTOW stands for themselves. And so, even though there's things we all agree on, it's one of those scenarios. The other thing I would say too, especially, and this from being in the public eye for over 10 years. Oh
yeah. You get tons of trash talk and negative comments.
Always. Yeah. Holy shit. Even I get them. So, even Grizzly gave me an F-bomb earlier. So, and he and I are friends.
I clearly understand the severity of the problem, and that's why I wrote the book. That's why I speak out about it every day. But I think there's a difference between, it's the way it's, do you think that feminists, when they talk shit about men, do you think that that's just friendly banter, or do you think that that's coming from a place of actual male bashing? I think that we can all agree that there's a difference between friendly banter, joshing each other and, razzing each other and being sarcastic. I can sit in a room full of guys all day and take that kind of shit because that's fun. But, but the kind of things that feminists say about men, and the kind of things that a lot of the MGTOWs were saying in this chat room and on comments that I've seen, it's just I think that reaches a different level. That's beyond sarcasm. And I hope we can at least agree on that. That's. Oh, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. Listen, I'm not saying that they're not giving you a litmus test. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that I think that at the end of the day, you're going to find that every woman that walks into a MGTOW community, they get that. And the women who stay are the ones who can look beyond that. And then the guys are like, okay, this doesn't trigger her anymore. So, okay, we're going to move on and actually have a conversation. And that's what I've seen. Roseblades catches a lot of shit from a lot of the guys in the MGTOW community, but she still has conversations with these guys. She still is able to communicate with them and have reasonable discussions. And there are other women out there that I know of that the same thing happens. But I think the thing that I want you to be cognizant of is that, yeah, I've got 100 people watching, or 75 people right now since the stream dropped and we had to bring it back up. Yeah.
The majority of the people who watch my content, the majority of people who go to my channel, the majority of the people that I speak with, they aren't like that. And the silent MGTOW community is definitely the majority. So you're going to see a vocal minority no matter where you go. And the other thing I would say too is, don't take disagreement as a don't misinterpret disagreement as toxic, because that's not how it's meant.
Oh no, I definitely don't. I don't interpret disagreement as toxic.
Okay. But yeah, and again, you made some reasonable and well thought out points. So I don't want you to feel as though you're being dismissed in any way. I just want you to understand that it's a little bit more complex than it seems on the surface. That's all.
Yeah.
So, but with that, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time out and making this interview happen. And I hope that down the road, we will have an opportunity for another chat or two.
For sure. It's been a great time, and I enjoyed it very much, and glad that we got to some great conversations. It was fun. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. And guys, for those of you that are still sticking around, just as an FYI, feel free to subscribe to the channel, especially if you're an Amazon Prime member. You can subscribe to the channel for free. It benefits me and it's free to you. This video will go into post-production, and I will try to get it uploaded today to YouTube. I'll try to put both pieces of the video together so that it actually has some sort of basically rhyme or reason, because obviously I got cut off. So with that, I appreciate everybody sticking around, and we will go from there. And like I said, feel free to check it out on YouTube, and I will put links into DeAnna's YouTube channel and her website and her social media for those people that are interested in following her. So thanks again, guys, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.